Hey everybody, and welcome to the second annual Halloween special of Yeah But Still. I'm your host, Jack, and as many of you know, last year I decided to ask our listeners if they've ever experienced something that be considered unexplained or paranormal. And I honestly didn't think I was going to get many responses. It was something I just wanted to try, but I was completely overwhelmed by how many responses I got. Not only that, but the variety of them, all different types of things. And I was also impressed by how intense some of them were, and from all over the world, too. So this year, I'm back again, and I'm doing the same thing. But I've talked to even more people this year, and what you're about to hear is a series of interviews I've been conducting over the last month with people who listen to this podcast. I wouldn't call myself a fan of paranormal, exactly. I wouldn't call myself a skeptic either. I think being one or the other is kind of just seems sort of silly, like you're on a team or something. And I made this episode specifically to be enjoyed by pretty much anyone, no matter what they believe about this stuff. I do think this stuff is really fascinating. It makes for really good stories. But I also hate most of the shows and movies and documentaries about the paranormal. For a few reasons. One of the main reasons is that a lot of those people in the shows, they desperately want to see something. I mean, not only do they want to, they're out making a show that, they're going to make money if they see something. So even if they do, you have to consider that, these people are, if they're hearing something, they want to hear it. They actively want this to happen. So it's hard to take that seriously. I'm not really interested in stories like that. I'm not a paranormal freak. I'm not out to prove things to be real. I'm not on a mission. In fact, I'm much less interested in the paranormal aspect as I am interested in stories like this, and how the person themselves that went through it dealt with it. Because it's not like the movies. When this stuff happens to people, for the most part, they don't want it to happen, or not even that. They couldn't even not want it to happen because it wasn't even on their radar. A lot of times this stuff happens to people where they see something and they didn't even know about the thing before. Something happens and they have to go look it up, if anything. They don't want it to happen. They weren't even thinking about it happening. Just suddenly it just happens. It's like a car accident. It just comes out of nowhere in an instant, and then it's over. And a lot of people never even tell anybody about this stuff. And they have to live with it, and they react to it in a variety of ways. And you'll hear in this episode a good amount of variety. Some of these stories are very eerie and scary. Some are funny, and some are just super strange and maybe even sad. But these are all stories from people who listen to this podcast, and I think that's the most important because you at least have something in common with these people, whether you believe it or not. There's something to be said about that. The one thing I will say about the paranormal, and basically everything that we're going to cover in this episode, is that there's a lot we don't know in the world still. And we learn new things every day. A lot of things that we look at as just very regular right now used to be mythical. So many so that it's actually even hard to keep track of them. A good example of this is that the gorilla wasn't discovered until 1902 officially. Before that, it was this rumor of this hairy man creature living in the jungles. It was literally mythical. And even after scientists started to see them, people wouldn't believe them about it. And it wasn't officially discovered until 1902. And for context, the air conditioner was invented in 1902. So when we had air conditioning, people didn't think that gorillas were real. And that goes on and on. We just discovered the giant squid. That was literally a mythical creature until 2004 it was photographed, and then they finally captured it in 2006. So that was just recently. The concept of germs weren't even discovered until during the Civil War, which, I mean, it's hard to even imagine a world where you didn't know about that concept. The concept of germs in general, that was considered fantasy before. So many things that are just almost mundane at this point used to be fantastical. Magnets, those used to be considered magical. If you go back and read myths, a lot of things that are very, very mundane now used to be so fantastical. And the truth is, we just really don't know a lot, and we have a lot to learn. So to pick a side of believing or not believing in something is just kind of a waste of time when it comes to this type of stuff, because we know so little. You could say that a person who believes in Sasquatch is silly, right? But then again, imagine being a person in 1890 who actively didn't believe in gorillas. That's equally silly to me. Somebody who's taking time out of their day to try to disprove a gorilla. I mean, it's just something we don't know, and quite frankly, you don't have to form a binary opinion one way or the other on this stuff. So what you're about to hear is a collection of interviews I've done with people who listen to this podcast about things that they've gone through and they've experienced. I hope you enjoy it. And without further ado, welcome to the second annual Yeah But Still Halloween special. I want to kick this off with one of my favorite stories that I heard while recording this. This comes to us from a guy named Grayson, who's actually the frontman of a band called Spooky Mansion. So go check them out after you're done listening to this podcast. But I got the sense that this is probably one of many very, very wild stories that Grayson has. He's had a really interesting life. And one big factor of that is that he grew up not knowing his dad. And for very bizarre reasons, too. His dad lived a very interesting life, to say the least. So he didn't end up meeting his dad until he was in his 20s. And he was in Europe for school, studying abroad, and realized that that's where his dad was living. So he just hit him up, went over there, and as a grown man, he just met his dad as a perfect stranger, and they just had to catch up. And the story you're about to hear is one of the stories that his dad ended up telling him. And yeah, without further ado, I'll let Grayson take over. Here's his story.
My name is Grayson, and I guess when I was 4 years old, my dad moved away, and he was kind of like not in the picture a lot, traveling, and he and my mom didn't get along super well. But it kind of culminated in him going to jail, and then he got out of jail when I was 4, and just kind of lived on the streets, rough life. And the only contact I have is occasionally he would write my grandparents letters, and they would kind of tell me about it. But it wasn't until I was 21, I think, that I was living abroad in France, and it sort of occurred to me to like look him up. And so I went over there and arrived at the train, and there was just this big guy that sort of looked like me waiting at the train station. And I stayed with him for 2 weeks, and we basically would just stay up in the evenings, and he'd tell me these crazy stories. So he told me this story years later when I met him. And he grew up sailing all his life with his dad and stuff. And he knew a guy down in San Francisco who had a boat. And so he went down there one night, and they kind of like shared this slip and used this boat interchangeably. And I guess he had this plan to take it. So one night he like broke into the docks and took this boat, packed it with all his stuff, and just started going south down the California coast. And not sure how long he went, but he passed Mexico, through the Panama Canal, and eventually ended up in the Caribbean on this island called Curacao. And he stopped there for like 5 years or so, and he got involved, I'm not sure, with some local dudes somehow, but they basically ran like this rum smuggling business, where they would go down to Venezuela, and these guys would make rum in bathtubs, and they had these fake Captain Morgan labels, and they'd put them on the bottles, and they'd sell these fake Captain Morgan bottles. And so he did that for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years or something. eventually one night he decided that he was sick of that place, and in like the middle of the night took his boat and left, kind of without packing up anything or without preparing really. And he started this trip across the Atlantic, and he had decided to go to England for some reason. He would spend the next month plus just going through the Atlantic Ocean by himself on this a 38-foot sailboat, I think it was. And didn't have any plans to stop anywhere, or didn't have anyone with him. And at some point during that whole trip, he was going along, and his rudder broke, which was used to steer the boat. And so I think that was kind of the breaking point when his whole life kind of came crashing down around him, and he realized that through all his crazy choices, he'd found himself in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, weeks away from either coast, and sort of careening aimlessly with this sail full of wind and no way to steer it. And so the way he told it was, he let down his sail, and he spent most of the time on his boat naked because the waves would make everything soaking wet, and so all his clothes were heavy and wet. And he realized he was, getting out of food, out of water, and so he would spend his days just trying to pass out and sleep as much as possible. Wake up and was depressed to be awake because he didn't want to deal with his life, I guess, and would eat what beans he had or whatever, and try to divide up his water so he could have enough, and then go back to sleep and wake up in this soaking wet bed. And I don't know, what made me so interested in that certain aspect is just imagining a probably 35-year-old guy just dealing with his own mind in a way that one rarely gets to deal with it. And whatever feelings or thoughts you have late at night, whatever anxieties you have about who you are and what you're doing with your life, I just imagine that was so magnified for him, and he was up against that wall that we just imagined, but he was up against that wall that was this is the end of my life, this is where my choices have brought me. And so one morning he wakes up, I guess pretty much just assuming he's going to die out there, and he hears a voice on deck. And so he goes up there, and at the back of the boat, right over his broken rudder, he sees this apparition, like a spirit or a ghost or something. And he said it was green and sort of small, but he said it was sort of looked like a Pan kind of creature, like a goat kind of thing. And so but he hears this voice, and it's coming from this goat, and it's talking about whatever, this and that, and he sort of starts to commune with it over the next couple days, and they talk and communicate, and it's his only source of contact with another thing. And so one morning he's lying on the deck, and he starts to really tune into what it's saying, and in kind of this mocking tone it's going you idiot, if only you would think you could take part of your boat, one of these metal rods, and you could rig it up, and you could fix this rudder, and you could get out of here, and you could live. And so the next thing he knows, he's flying across the ocean with a fixed rudder, with no memory of actually fixing it. And later, what he tells me when he's telling me this story is that when, over the course of the next week or two that it takes him to get there, he examines this rudder, and it's he has no idea how he even went about fixing it, or the process it would have taken. And not only does he not remember it, he doesn't even realize how he would have done it. Eventually he made it to England, and when he got there, he was, hadn't eaten properly or had enough water, and his boat was like in such disarray. He landed on these docks. Long story short, this woman up on the hill was like a rich older woman, was watching him down on the dock. She could see from her window, and she eventually sent somebody down, and she kind of helped him to get better and healed him and let him live with her for quite a while. And so over the next 20 years, he kind of settles into this little town. It's like hearing it as a story, you'd go, oh, that's crazy, wow, interesting. But I think living it for him, because it was so real, it was like, it's the kind of thing that would make you go like crazy if you didn't have like some kind of explanation to it. And so eventually he finds out that this is actually a phenomenon called the third man syndrome. And it was made really famous by this explorer, Ernest Shackleton. There's been a bunch of studies about it, and it's basically that part of your brain is trying to override like the panic, desperation part of your brain. And so it goes back to this really like, primeval part of your brain that's saying like, that's trying to bring reason and like positivity to a situation that is desperate. And so I think it's like to the extreme of when you're depressed or you're under pressure and you say to yourself, you know what, no, like we can do this. It's like that brought to like the nth degree, where you actually have like these, manifestations in real life, and you're seeing like in the case of my dad, an apparition that his brain projected in order to guide him through this strange thing.
All right, welcome back, everybody. I think that story sets the stage quite well for the type of things I want to play for you guys on this episode. It doesn't really matter if what happened back there was paranormal or something that we don't quite understand yet about the human brain. The fact that it happens is all that matters. It happened to him, and it was real to him. I think it was super fascinating, especially a thing that I don't think we touched on enough is that he not only did he wake up not remembering fixing the rudder, he just woke up and that boat rudder was fixed. I got the sense that he didn't even understand how he fixed it when he looked at it. The way it was fixed, I got the sense that it was fixed in a way where he didn't think he even had the skills to do that. And neither myself or Grayson knew the answer of how a boat rudder breaks or how it would be fixed. But the way his dad told the story, that was a pretty big detail that I wish we covered more in the actual recording. But yeah, I really like that story. So thank you, Grayson, and definitely go check out his band Spooky Mansion if you're interested. Our next story is a topic near and dear to my heart. First of all, this comes from California. In fact, it comes from a little north of LA, so this is a local story. And it's a topic that I've increasingly started to become interested in, and that is UFOs, which, by the way, I don't think that's the official term for them anymore. In fact, if you haven't heard, the government's recently confirmed a good amount of things in terms of the existence of UFOs. The fact of the matter is we don't know too much, and I have to admit, a big factor in these being confirmed is none other than Blink-182's Tom DeLonge. I can't believe I'm sitting here admitting that, but after all these years of Tom saying he's researching the UFOs and claiming all this stuff, he came out with evidence, and the Navy confirmed it. So I'm not going to dive into a hole about UFO stuff. I have gone into a hole, though, recently. And a lot of these sightings have taken place along the coasts, very close to where I live. And I spend a good amount of time out in the desert, and it's a strange topic, It's also probably the most real and scary. We know so little, and there's a ton of stories about UFOs, and quite frankly, most of them are bullshit. Most of them are bullshit, or made up by people that are just out of their minds. And as this topic's increasingly confirmed, we could sort of sort through them more accurately. But I get super excited every time I hear something that's credible about this, or it's told by a person similar to the one you're about to hear. I had an episode last year about one that I thought was super fascinating, and I think this one is just as fascinating. So it was something that happened very unexpectedly. This is not a person who was going out looking for them. It just happened. And it happened in a way where it left very, very little room for a skeptic to say that it was something else. I grilled him about this. It's not in the episode, but before we talked, I asked him a long series of questions about if this could have been something else. And none of them led me to believe that it could have been anything else. So without further ado, I'm going to let him take it over from here.
Hi, my name is Dave. I'm from Santa Barbara, and this story is about a UFO encounter that I had when I was back in high school. So me and my buddies, one weekend, we were planning on going on a camping trip out in Ojai, which is about 30 minutes south and east, so inland Southern California. And we got like this really shitty campsite that only a group of high school guys could afford. So there's just nobody that was camping there but us. So we get there, everything's great. You know, we're drinking, we're having a good time. And then on the last night that we were there, we had run out of alcohol like halfway through the day. So we kind of were forced to, have an easygoing evening. So we were pretty sober by the time that we got into our sleeping bags and went to bed. And because it was just so hot and dry, we were like, let's sleep with the tarp off. It'd be nice to fall asleep under the stars and just kind of have this like one with nature moment. So 6 high school guys stuffed into a tent in their sleeping bags, all asleep. And then I'd say about like 3 a.m. It was like early in the morning. I couldn't really tell exactly what time it is. I wake up to first my friends next to me going like, what the fuck is that? Like, holy shit, what's that? And then I come to more and my senses come to, and there's a UFO overhead. I don't really know what else to call it, but a UFO overhead, like directly overhead, shining this really bright light down on us. And we're all like, yelling like, what the fuck is that? Like, holy shit. And the one really striking thing about this was this UFO was emitting this noise, and it was maybe one of the loudest sounds I've ever heard. But what was so distinct about this sound was, everybody's experienced, a concert or something that's like just a loud noise, but this was loud in the sense that it was resonant almost. It was hitting our body's natural resonant frequency, and I could feel it rattling my brain and my skull and like my entire body, and it like permeated it was just so piercingly loud and just permeating our bodies. And this thing just hovered over us for a good solid 15 seconds, and it was maybe about 100 to 150 feet off the ground, so fairly low in terms of aircraft, so it seemed. As cheesy as it sounds, it was a blinding light, and then it looked like just a typical saucer. It was like lightly rotating. It had some. We could tell from its shape that it was like the light of just like the ambient light, that it was slowly rotating. So me and my friends just stared at this UFO over us in a trance. Not knowing what was going to happen, not knowing what we should do. Like, should we flee the scene? We just we're frozen there, kind of like hypnotized by it. And eventually, the UFO flew away, and by fly, it was more of a hover. It just kind of glided away until eventually it was out of sight, and the sound was no longer audible. And we all just kind of looked at each other like what the fuck was that? Like, we're just a bunch of hungover high school guys in the middle of the night. Like, we have no idea what the hell just happened. And it was really surreal because this was unlike any sort of aircraft I've ever encountered. Like, it wasn't a helicopter because, you know, helicopters sound very distinct. There's the sound of the blades chopping the air. If it was pretty low to the ground, even if like 100 feet, I'd imagine there'd be at least like some sort of wind movement, you know, dust blowing or something. But and then when it flew away, again, there's no like chopper. It was almost weird. It was almost like it wasn't even affected by the Doppler effect. Like, the audio and the hum of it didn't warp as it flew away. It just almost like died down, like someone was rolling off the volume on it. Anyway, so me and my friends that I'm still good or close with from the trip were, whenever we meet up and we're hanging out and somehow this trip comes to mind, we all kind of just think like, wow, what the hell was that? None of us are really super keen on like UFOs and paranormal stuff. If anything, I guess that I would be the one that's the most interested in maybe believing of that type of stuff. But even like my most stoic friends that were on that trip and most, you know, skeptical were like, yeah, don't know what that was. That was odd, wasn't it? And that was about almost 10 years ago at this point. And every now and then I get curious and I try to look up some sort of database of UFO sightings in the area and regarding, you know, the description or like the area, the time, and nothing really matches it. And I'll leave it at this. The really interesting thing about this UFO sighting is it was so weird and unsimilar to the ones that I've heard. You know, a lot of the UFO sightings that I've read or have heard from testimonies have been about this thing in the sky that's far away, and right when people see it's almost like it feels detected, and it feels like it shouldn't be seen, and it needs to flee, and it zips away. But it was almost like this UFO was directly making itself known. Like, it was very deliberate in what it was doing, and it wanted us or whoever else was in the area or just the area in general to know that it was there and know that it saw everything. I'm not scared. It's definitely a point of, I wouldn't say trauma, but definitely it leaves a mark on, or left a mark on my psyche, because when you're faced as a human with a concept or an entity that represents something that you can't even comprehend, your brain kind of malfunctions, and you're thinking, it's otherworldly, it's surreal, and it's still kind of, it just makes my head spin just considering it. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling, but I don't really know how to describe it. Yeah.
All right, everybody, welcome back. I really like that story. Selfishly, I'm super fascinated by this stuff. There's so many terrible bullshit stories out there, and there have been for so long. But just recently, I think we're starting to get some kind of credible stuff, and I think the more credible people who come out about it, it inspires other people who are afraid to come forward about it to do so. So I think we're living in an exciting time. Like I said, the Navy, the government's never confirmed anything regarding this stuff in history until just now. So if you want to go through a hole, start diving into that. And that's all I'll tell you to dive into for now. And I'm going to prevent myself from diving into a hole about UFOs on this episode. But it's pretty fascinating stuff, and kind of awe-inspiring, and maybe, I don't know, scary is not quite the right word. It's just mind-boggling. That was my big takeaway from his story, is that this happened to him, and he just kind of had to figure out how to go on living, knowing that he experienced this. It's crazy what that does to your mind. So anyway, let's get going with our next story. This one's going to be quick. This is a quick one, but I found it super fascinating. I I'm from Chicago, as a lot of you guys know. I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and we definitely got ourselves scared. There's actually some good ghost stories in Chicago, some really good ones, and maybe something I'll cover on next year's episode. But other than that, I mean, it's kind of boring out there. Let's face it. There's not really too much UFO stuff, we have like tornadoes or whatever, but there was never anything super interesting until recently. After I moved from Chicago, actually, I started seeing all of these stories about basically a Mothman sighting. People were seeing what they thought was like a Mothman type figure all over Chicago, and it kind of happened all at once. And some of them seem kind of fishy. And of course, after there's a couple big stories, then everybody starts to come out of the woodwork, and you'll get some goofballs. But this story actually happened long before that, and I was really fascinated by this one. This got brought to me by one of our listeners, and the main story happened to his brother, who did not like to talk about it, but I eventually did talk to him, and he was very matter of fact about it. You'll hear from him soon, but this is something that he saw, and I don't know. He came off to me like a very classic Midwestern guy. It was actually kind of funny talking to him, because we're talking about a subject that is very fantastical and mind-boggling, right? And he had a very straightforward reaction to it, and it was hard to get a lot out of him. Midwesterners are kind of reserved like that. So this is a very, very interesting subject. The Mothman, or really winged cryptids, I think would be the official category, kind of like a humanoid flying creature. And I'll say this is the only one I recorded, but this is not the only Mothman sighting that I got submitted to me. In fact, maybe after this story, I will cover one of the other ones, just telling you about it. But this is absolutely not the first one that was submitted to me, and a lot of them are eerily similar. So yeah, here it is.
My name's Dex. I'm from Chicago, originally from Streamwood, which is a suburb of Chicago. My brother had he had an experience where he saw what I think is a Mothman. So I was living at home, and my brother was, living with us, and he came home one night, and he was just really shook up by what had just happened. And he drove his girlfriend home. It was about 2 a.m, and they drove down, couldn't have been more than a mile, a road that we've driven down a million times. And they stopped in the middle of the road because they saw like a 7-foot-tall man just standing there. And both him and his girlfriend saw it, so they knew it wasn't, he wasn't just seeing things. He's just like he's very normal. Like at that time, he's very quiet, soft-spoken. He doesn't like to go into detail about anything. He doesn't talk much. He just had a look, like he didn't want to talk about what he saw. And the next day, he kind of went into more detail about it. But yeah. First, he thought it was a person just standing there, but then he noticed the height of it and that the skin was black, and they just sat there and looked at it. It just shot up into the sky. He said it didn't flap or anything. It just kind of rocketed up.
Are you recording right now?
Yeah, I can start recording.
Okay.
If you're ready.
All right. Hi, my name's Austin. I'm from Streamwood, Illinois, and I experienced the Mothman, I guess, in Streamwood or Elgin, right around there. I was coming home one night, it was probably around 1 a.m. I was just dropping my girlfriend off, and we live right along the forest preserve. So this was in between, if you're familiar with the area, in between 59 and Irving. And just driving down, and I see this creature just walking alongside the forest preserve, and it was about as tall as I think like a street sign as there's a turn coming up, maybe a little bit shorter than the top of it, probably about the middle. And as I got closer, when my headlights hit it, as it got brighter, it just like jumped in the air and flew vertical. And the wingspan was huge. It was just like a human flying. It was just, and I didn't even say anything when I saw it. I just was silent for about 5 seconds, and I just went to my girlfriend and I was like, "Did you just fucking see that?" And she's like, "Yeah, I have no idea what that was." So I know I wasn't crazy or hallucinating anything. It was just I didn't even really tell anybody about it for the longest time, except my friend. I called him as soon as I got home, just freaking out. Like, at what I saw, I just needed to tell somebody, so I called my buddy Andrew. But yeah, after that, I didn't tell anybody for months because I thought people would think I was crazy. The most I could compare it to is the Jeepers Creepers thing, which is ridiculous, I know, but that's like the closest thing I could compare it to. Yeah, it's just like that thing with human legs, and how it flew was just vertical. It wasn't like a bird. Yeah, it was walking like a human and then just took off. It was nuts. It was gone so fast. Every time I drive down that road, I'm looking in the trees and stuff now to see if I see anything. But no, yeah, it just freaked me out. But now I'm not in that type of way where it's makes me a different person.
When we talked about it, it was more like researching, what had happened and if anyone had seen anything like that in the area. And that's when we came upon Native Americans talking about thunderbirds, and then I came around and saw Mothman lore, but not much in Chicago at that time. Now, I think it was 2 years ago, there was a big flapping sightings, and I think there were about 5 sightings that were documented. Most of them were along the lake. One of them was downtown. Another one I think was along 55. A trucker saw it. I like to talk about it. It's really interesting to me that the whole cryptid. It's like folklore to me. I just like the stories. So I would talk about it, and then my friends were like, "Dude, we saw something like that in Streamwood around the same time that Austin saw that." And it happened to them when they were going from my friend's house to a 7-Eleven. And to get there, you had to walk across. It was like a community center. There was a church, and there was also youth baseball fields with creeks and trees in between. But as they were walking past the community center, they saw something fly out of a tree, and they noticed the size of it. We don't live in the city at this point, and we've seen birds, we've seen hawks and owls and all that. But the size of this, freaked them out. And just like Austin said, they said it just shot up right into the sky. So it freaked them out, and they started to run. They're running down the street, and they were passing, but it's a little densely wooded area. And they heard something rustling, so they looked over, and then same thing. They just saw the thing shoot straight up into the sky again, and that was the last they saw of it. But they took off running. My friend said he still thinks about it a lot. He said he's haunted by it. He still remembers it. And what's funny is it makes me think that a lot of the people who saw Mothman in Chicago said it was more of a rounded shape, more of a moth shape, or a butterfly shape. But what he saw, he said it looked like a man with wings coming out the back. I mean, I think that people see things. Obviously he saw something, but I don't think it's the same thing that, seen in Point Pleasant in the 60s or 70s, or I don't know. I mean, I couldn't tell you. We call it Mothman, but it might be something else. Who knows what it is?
All right. So I really like that one, mainly because I'm from that area, but also I know a lot of guys like that. And if you couldn't tell, I mean, he wasn't excited to tell this story. It was hard to get a lot out of him. And I mean, for that reason, I believe him more. It's always a good sign that somebody is lying when they're really eager to tell you about it, and trying to convince you really hard. That's always a little fishy. If they're almost excited to tell you, especially when it was something that's supposed to be terrifying, if they're too excited. But it was the opposite with him, and he didn't even know about this. Only later did he know that this is a thing that people see. I know he compared it to the Jeepers Creepers guy. which if you haven't seen that, it's like a movie that came out in the early 2000s, I think. But I mentioned before, this is not the only story that I received like this. So the story you just heard, he didn't know what it was, and I just checked. This is a story that I didn't get a chance to record, but it was eerily similar. So this came from one of our listeners, and it was told by his grandma and grandpa, who he heard something happen to them like this, and he finally pried the story out of them. But basically, it takes place in Nebraska, in a small town. And I won't read the story verbatim, but it took place a long time ago, and essentially, it was his grandma, grandpa, and great uncle driving down the road at night in this small town, and they see this 8 or 9 foot tall creature on the side of the ditch, and it took 2 steps and was suddenly in front of them in the road, like, clearly had a big stride. And what happened was super similar to the story we just heard. They stared at it, were in complete terror, and suddenly the thing takes off straight into the sky. And they actually ended up chasing it just out of curiosity, even though his grandma was terrified. But they didn't know what it was. And when they told this story, they were calling it the Winghead. They just called it Winghead, I think. And I guess there was other sightings of this at the time in their small town. A couple people had seen this. But, I mean, it really sticks out to me that this is a very, very similar experience. It happened a while ago and in a complete vacuum, A very similar thing happened to these people in a different state, and they didn't know what it was either. They had gave it a completely different name. And there's a ton of stories like this. For how weird the Mothman story is, and there's not even a good story. It's not like a great myth. It's just a thing. It's like a concept. But there's so many stories about it. I don't really know what to make of it, quite frankly, but that happened pretty close to where I grew up, so kind of scared me. So this next one is it's completely unhinged. I'm barely editing this. This is more of a conversation. These guys called me. I just think this one's funny and amusing. There's no intro I could give to it. It starts on one thing, it goes somewhere else. But I thought it was worth putting in there because it's just so strange. This is pretty much a barely edited version of this conversation I had with these dudes that I thought you guys would be amused by. So I'm just gonna let you listen to this.
All right. Well, my name is Xavier.
This is Connor.
And I think this happened. How long ago do you think this was? Like a month ago, maybe?
About a month ago, yeah.
Yeah. It was a month ago in Weymouth, Massachusetts. We were hanging out at this kid Robbie's house, who's a drummer for Connor's band.
And it's pretty much a punk house at this point, because, it's just Robbie and his girlfriend that live there, so it's just the punk band that's there for this whole time.
Yeah. And so we were there to spend the night because a concert was going to happen the night after. And so everyone was practicing in the basement. There were, for reference, there's Colin and Becca, that's one couple. Then there's Robbie and Molly, that's the other. And then it's me, Connor, my Joe, and then our friend Sean. And
so before we'd even gotten there for the night, Colin and Becca, as soon as we get there, they say they did a ritual, and they made what they called a servitor, which is kind of a ghost made by a ritual. You make the ghost yourself. And the whole point of this ghost was to write songs for them. And so in the ritual, they made it so that you charge up the ghost's spiritual energy with this chant. It goes, Ramanati Hase Ramona.
Wow, you guys remember this?
Yeah, this is vague stuff. I mean, this freaked us out.
Should you be doing this chant on the podcast is my question.
She seems like a nice ghost.
Yeah, she's a nice ghost.
Okay. So what were you guys, I'm jumping in here. Actually, I do have some questions. What were you guys thinking at this point when she tells you this?
I mean, I thought it was like fun, interesting, kind of goofy stuff.
Yeah,
I was like, it's just like just random fun. Like nothing's gonna come of this.
Colin and Becca at it again with the chaos magic stuff. Nothing much is gonna happen.
They do a lot of this kind of stuff. So we were just like, haha, funny, interesting stuff, cool. You made a ghost named Ramona. All fun and games.
So one way to charge its energy is the chant, and the other is just to play music. So everyone was doing the chant all day, and it was also band practice, so music was just being played for hours on end.
Yeah, and we're all hanging out. We've been doing this for a while. There's also, part of it is, there is a symbol that they made that kind of looked like a stick figure doing like the little Egyptian stance with its arms, but it was like made out of triangles, essentially. And like that's what you're supposed to worship.
A sigil is what it's called.
Yes.
A sigil.
Yeah. And so that's the whole point. And so they made this ghost named Ramona, and it was supposed to sing songs so that they could use those songs and write them for their punk band. And so we do the chant a few times. We're hanging out, we're drinking, we're smoking weed in the house, doing whatever. And we just eventually kind of move past it. We're just hanging out, talking about God knows what.
So it's like 3 or 4 a.m. and like Robbie and Molly had gone to sleep in the basement. Colin and Becca go to sleep like upstairs, like on the second floor. And then myself, Xavier, Joe, and Sean, we're about to go to sleep on the first floor. And then right before like sleep, and keep in mind like drinking was happening, but like we're pretty much sober.
Yeah, we weren't like drunk or anything, and we're like setting up to like sleep on the floor. Like we're just putting like blankets down and stuff. Also, the jam room's in the basement. We weren't allowed to play past like maybe like midnight, because I think Robbie said his neighbor was a cop or something.
It's like 9 or 10.
Yeah, even earlier. Yeah. So music was just not a thing that could have possibly happened. Like, we're not trying to get Robbie's cop neighbor to get pissed at us. So we're all finally setting up, and me, Connor, Joe, and Sean all hear someone plug a bass into an amp and start playing like kind of a bluesy bass line, and Molly plays bass. So we were just like, oh, okay. It's just Molly playing bass, I guess. Kind of weird. It's 3 a.m.
It wasn't bad bass playing. It was pretty decent bass playing.
Yeah, it was pretty good. We just thought nothing of it and went to sleep. But it was going on for like a while. Like, I think I fell asleep to it.
Yeah, it was like at least maybe 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah. And we wake up the next day. We start making coffee. We like literally just didn't even talk about it. And was it Colin and Becca or Molly that came up first?
Probably Molly. Probably Molly said it first, yeah.
So Molly comes back up, and we were like, hey, I mean, that bass line was pretty good last night. She's just like, I wasn't playing bass. I heard someone playing drums. It kind of kept me up. I just assumed one of you guys were playing drums for some fucking reason. And at that point, we're like, okay, something's up. Like, none of us were playing drums. Like, Sean's a drummer, but he was with us the whole time. Like, passed out immediately. That dude's a sound sleeper. And then, like, maybe 15 or 20 minutes pass, and then Colin and Becca come downstairs. And we asked them, like, hey, did you guys hear anything last night? And they say, yeah, someone was playing drums. It kept Becca awake. And now we're freaked out because clearly none of us were playing instruments. I mean, like, Colin and Becca heard it from 2 flights up. It had to be loud drumming. We didn't hear any drumming, though. It was strictly bass. But we definitively, all 4 of us, heard someone plug into a bass.
And everyone in the house heard something. It was just the people in the basement, and on the second floor heard drumming, and on the first floor it was just bass.
And the weird thing is, like, this was the first time, but it's not the only time.
What did your friends who believe in the chaos magic say about all this?
They were just as shocked.
Yeah, because they were confused because the whole ritual was for the ghost to be like singing and to be like writing like songs and poetry that then they could make into like band songs. So they were just confused because it was like instrumental. Yeah, there's even a bit of lore with them. They were planning to do something like bigger with the rituals before a sort of event happened.
Oh, do tell.
Do you want like a long, in-depth story?
Sure. I mean, we're in it.
Okay, because this is fucking crazy.
Yeah.
So, Colin, in high school, knew this kid. We'll call him Jay, and he was always into like the occult and magic, and like there would always be these like really cool like acid parties over his house. And they were planning on doing like a cult thing, but then Jay, he moved at like 17 with like $400 to California, and him and his like then girlfriend just like lived in tents for 6 months, just like tripping every day, and like just going to raves and shit and like selling acid. And they did like so much crazy shit there. Like the ex-girlfriend is now dating a 40-year-old Hare Krishna meth addict. And then so they broke up, and Jay thought he needed to find himself. So he like walked around in the desert for 6 weeks with like minimal food and water, and then came back. He just walks up the driveway, and he'd walked like halfway across Massachusetts, and he was only like subsisting off of literally roadkill and beer. That was his entire diet.
Sorry. It's hard to. Okay, keep going.
This is like crazy shit. Like, you told me this and I lost it.
I'm like waiting for it to become paranormal, but it's already weird enough. But keep going.
Yeah. Well, he had a whole like religious like philosophy sort of where like he like was God and was like doing the devil's work. So there was a good amount of magic like with that. This kind of put a damper on the paranormal aspirations, because the like cult that was going to be formed with him wasn't formed because of this. So yeah, he comes back and he keeps talking to Alice. He's like, I really want to kill your neighbor's goat. And she's like, no, that's my neighbor's goat. Don't do that. And he says it constantly for 2 days and then leaves.
Why does he want to kill the goat?
So the ultimate goal was so that he could take the blood and put it in a necklace that he'd made, so it would bring him closer to Satan.
Okay.
So he got a ride back to where he was from. And then he was just on the loose for a few days, like going into like people's houses. He went into someone from his high school's house and was like, hey, finish carving this pentagram on my shoulder. I couldn't do it deep enough.
Oh my God.
And then after a couple days, someone's goat goes missing.
Oh,
and
boy.
It was a baby goat that these people had like bought for like their little daughter. It was named Marshmallow. And he ended up like sneaking in, breaking the fence at night, taking the goat, cutting its throat, and then putting the blood into a water bottle to then put in the necklace to bring him closer to Satan.
Jesus.
And then yeah, he got arrested.
I mean, as you should.
So that was the damper on the chaos magic. How did he relate to the chaos magic people?
He was friends with all of them, and they would do rituals sometimes.
So this was like the Ramona thing coming back was like really the first time that this had actually worked, and the first time they'd actually done it in a while, from what Colin was telling me, because he was scared to do this after that whole incident.
Yeah.
And it worked like almost immediately.
Where's the goat guy now?
He was in it. No, he was just not in jail, but in like the mental hospital for over a year, and now he's out, and he's actually awaiting trial.
Oh, for the goat?
Yeah.
I mean, he did kill a goat.
Well, this took a very, very strange turn from an already strange place.
I've got to say, these are definitely some of the weirdest people I've ever met.
Yeah.
They're very bizarre.
Yeah, I can tell.
At this point, we're just like asking for Ramona to come back. Like, I've just told all my friends to start chanting it. And we're just waiting. But I think it's really just in that one house. I think it's just it's stuck in the punk house or something. Because every time I've tried to sleep there, it happens.
You guys got to record her.
Yeah, no, honestly. Honestly.
There has to be a nightly chant.
Yeah. We just need to go back there and start doing it, essentially.
If you guys record her, report back, please.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, of course. I'll just like, I don't know, I'll update in the Discord or something.
All right, guys. I totally warned you about that one, but I don't even know what to make of that. I'm not going to try to do any kind of summation thing for the end of that story. I'm just going to leave that as it is. I've spent quite a fair amount of time in DIY punk spaces in my lifetime, and I've heard some weird shit, but that's just a whole different type of shit. I've never heard of chaos magic until now, and I have to assume that's probably the same for a lot of people listening to this. But anyway, let's dive into our next story. This is I really like this one, actually. This comes from two brothers, actually. Actually, I think these are also Midwestern boys, folks. And I'd say this is a pretty Midwestern story. It actually takes place in Japan, though. But I like this one. I'm just gonna let them tell it. But I'll say this story is a good example of terrifying stuff happening, and the people in the story dealing with it in their own way, which is very much not like the movies all the time.
Yeah, my name's Eric Pikinen, and then Dan Pikinen is my bro. He's 5 years older than me, right?
Yeah, 4 or 5, roughly.
4 or 5. Yeah, we're Midwestern boys. We're from Wisconsin, Madison. Basically, after high school, this was 2008. Dan, my brother, was stationed in the Navy out in Sasebo, Japan, and I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I was about to go to Columbia College in Chicago, which a couple of my buddies were going to, and then I was like, well, maybe I'll just go to Japan and kind of figure things out. Seems like a cool opportunity. So hop on a plane. Dan, we went to Tokyo for a little bit and then came back to the house. It's like, what is it, 1,000 square feet or something? Yeah, it wasn't a huge house, but
1,200, something like
that.
Yeah,
three bedrooms with a little main room, and in a little Sasebo is, I don't know, not a huge city. It's in Nagasaki, but a decent sized city, and it turns out Dan had to go out on the ship for like a month. So he's like, all right, man, like, you know, here you go. Like, here's the keys to the house. You know, here's where the grocery store is. You know, he's showing me around and whatever. I'm like 18. I'm like a dumbass. So I'm just like, all right, I'll try my best, whatever. So he leaves, you know, I send him off. He's out in the ocean, whatever, doing Navy stuff.
He sends me to the big war, the Great War.
The big war. So I'm just kind of hanging out, you know, at home. I'm like, well, you know, I'm in my bedroom, but Dan's room on the other side of the house, that's where one of the air conditioning units is, and it gets pretty hot. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to sleep in his room. It's like a tatami room. And after a while, I start to have these weird, like out of body experience dreams. which I've never had anything like that before prior to this. So like type of out of body experience where like I start floating out of my body and kind of like see my body sleeping. I guess it's kind of like sleep paralysis because I can't really like move or anything, but that starts happening to me every night. And it's super uncomfortable and weird. So I'm like, all right, I'll go try out my other bedroom and see how that goes. I start sleeping in there, and same thing happens. Like I start to drift off to sleep, and then like feel myself start to rise out of my body, and I'm like, and then I'll like jolt back awake, and this will kind of happen back and forth. It's like such a weird, odd feeling. It's super uncomfortable. And like, I was just like, I don't really understand what's going on, whatever. I'll just deal with it. I start hearing like footsteps and stuff at night, like people creeping around outside. And I'm just like, what is wrong with me? I'm totally in my head. Not to mention there's literally like a epic, massive graveyard site next to our house, like
kind of on
both
like sides of the neighborhood that we were in.
Yeah, like 5 levels of graveyard.
And giant stone statue. Very interesting spot. It was a World War II port, so there was many battles kind of in that realm going back for a very long time. And there's a lot of crazy ghost stories. Like right near where we lived, there was apparently when it rained, there's this like old stone bridge, and if you go in the tunnel underneath it, there's a World War II like American soldier in there that just like will like ask you for a cigarette. The little area we were in was called Takanashi-cho, and it used to be like a gangster village, Yakuza. And at the point when we lived there, it was mostly old people and, you know, pretty tame. But
yeah, and then one night it's like maybe like 2 a.m. For some reason, I like wake up in the middle of the night and like get out of bed and go into the living room and like sit down on the couch for a little bit. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I fully see like a ghost. I don't really know how else to describe it. Like it kind of looks like an old man creeping around. So I think I like got a hold of Dan. He's like on the boat. I'm like, hey man, like, you ever notice anything creepy about the house? And he's like, yeah, I have before. He like never really told me about it because, I mean, I don't know why. I guess if you would have told me, I probably would have expected it or something. Or maybe you can explain that, Dan.
Well, like for me, it was also like I had been having these experiences very similar to he's describing. However, for me, it was kind of, you know, how when you like something weird happens, like one example would be like the broomstick fell every night in the hallway, or just about for like the first couple weeks we were there. And I would just like, no matter what I did, how I laid it in the corner, it would like slide onto the floor towards the bathroom door. So I just had to like put it somewhere else. And I just kept going like, man, that's so weird that falls like that. So those kind of things, like you kind of just try to think of any excuse you can as to why, you know, it was happening. When Eric was coming, I was like, well, maybe I just won't tell him, because that way, if he does have an experience, it kind of confirms to me like something is funky with this place. It's not just something I preemptively told him about that kind of maybe manifested these things.
At that point, I just kind of accepted that like there might be a ghost in here. I don't really know how to like. I started drinking a lot at night just to like sort of deal with it. I was alone, like, you know, I really didn't have any friends in Japan or anything, so I didn't have a lot of like stuff to do. I sort of like dealt with it, I guess. It's kind of weird to even like think back about and try to remember the feeling, because like, what was I going to do? Like not stay there? It wasn't like terrifying, but it was just like such a weird, you know, like odd feeling. It's kind of undescribable. I guess that kind of brings us to when you finally returned. We just kind of would joke about it after that point, and things would happen while we were just hanging around the house. Like, remember when I think there's a rice cooker on top of our fridge, And one day it just literally flew off the top of the fridge and like smashed into the floor.
Yeah, we were just sitting in the other room and the only ones in the house. The glass exploded on the table that one time, which was pretty weird.
Like, just like, I guess poltergeist type stuff. Like, shit would just fly around and like break. And we would just look at each other like, all right, like, that's fucking weird, like, right?
One of my most strange sort of experiences I had was I headed to the same like shoji room, the tatami type floor in there.
Your bedroom, right?
Yeah, my bedroom. And was getting ready for bed, and it was late, and I had worked like 24 hours, so definitely sleep deprived, but which I think is kind of a catalyst for that to happen in that room. But I was laying down, and I got this like chill, like very uncomfortable feeling. And you know when you get like that chill, like you kind of throw your sheets like up over your head to like feel like, I don't know, more secure or something. But the way like the piece of the blanket fell in front of me, it created like a silhouette of what looked like a small like fetus, just like with the way that the light was coming through the shoji and like the blankets, the way it draped on the bed, it was like in that shape. I don't know if that makes sense how I'm describing it, but like it creeped me out that it looked like that shape. So like I smashed it, like the blanket down, so it didn't have that form anymore. And when I did, I just heard this high pitched scream, and like a weird shadow like child thing rolled into the room. And so terrifying. And then I was like, what the fuck? And I was like, I wasn't sure if I was like having a sleep paralysis spell or what was going on, but then I felt like little pulling sensations left and right, and I was like, this isn't happening. And I kind of slammed my hands down, and then it just kind of like misted, and I sat there and just kind of blankly stared. And then I was like, what the fuck kind of weird wet nightmare was that? And I went into the living room and just kind of sat in my computer chair, and I couldn't convince myself to go back to the room yet. And then I just eventually got the courage to go back to bed. But like at this point, the sun was kind of coming up, so it was less creepy. But I would say that was one of the most terrifying things I had seen. Similarly, right before we had gotten back that time, my ex-girlfriend was saying that she got terrified and stayed at her friend's house because the ceiling had like faces protruding out of it when she was trying to go to bed. And she was Japanese, so but yeah, she had explained to me in not so many words that she was having some odd experiences in there as well.
Yeah, it was almost like something about that house would like make you feel like you were like in between dream state. Like it was there was a lot of times where like I would have this out of body dream, and like I would see you come into my room and talk to me, but like when I finally woke up, I'd ask you about that, and you'd be like, yeah, I didn't do that. Like, I don't know what you're talking about.
I was out with my girlfriend driving around, and we got a phone call from the house, and our friend, we used to live in a different house, and one of our neighbors, she was like a single mom with a son who we were really good friends with. They were coming over for like dinner, and we were out just picking some stuff up for, the party. And I suddenly got like a frantic phone call from my roommates. They're like, dude, can you come home? Like something weird's going on. And I come in, and everybody's on the couch, like huddled. And I'm like, what is everyone freaked out about? They're like, is there anything in the hallway? I was like, I don't know. I was like, oh, you guys having like one of the spooky things happening? And I guess they were all sitting in the living room, and the house is pretty little, but there's two doors that could block off the hallway. So her son opened one of the doors, and he's like, oh, hello, sir. And then they're like, who are you talking to, Jordan? And he came back, he's like, oh, the old man in the hallway. Is that someone's grandpa? And they were like, there's no old man that lives here, Jordan. He's like, what? He's in the hallway. And he went back, and he was gone. There was no one there. And he's like, that's weird. And then everyone was freaked out. And then it made his mom, Naomi, she was like, this is freaking me out. And that's when we got the phone call when we were driving. But I guess after we had gotten back, she had gotten like comfortable enough to like go to the refrigerator and get something for herself to drink. And then she said she heard a child's voice she thought was Jordan say, I would like some juice, please, in Japanese. And she was like, okay, Jordan, what kind of juice did you want? But Jordan was sitting on the couch with us, and he didn't ask for juice. And we're like, Naomi, like, what do you, Jordan's over here. And then she just like screamed and like dropped the juice and like ran. So that was a spooky evening that occurred. And
yeah, it's just weird how many people experienced weird stuff at that house.
And yeah, I think the closing one, which I think is the most spooky, once again, like a fucking asshole, I didn't tell someone that was moving into the house about these things, but my sister-in-law now, so my wife and I had moved out of there that I'm with now, and we were living in Okinawa, and her sister Mika had moved to Sasebo while we had lived there, and while she was figuring out where she wanted to stay, she ended up staying in the house. And she took one of my roommate's old rooms, and in the middle of the night, like maybe 12:30 in the morning or something like that, we get like a phone call, and I'm like, what the hell's my phone ringing for? And Elisa had gotten a phone call a couple seconds ago that she had missed, and then it's my wife, and it's her sister, and she's like very frantic and upset, and we're like, what's going on? And she's like, somebody broke into the house, somebody's walking around, I'm in the room, but I don't know what to do. And I was like, oh, don't worry about it, there's like a ghost in the house, it's just the shuffling of an old man noise. And she's like, yeah. I was like, don't worry about it. And she's like, I don't like ghosts, I don't like these things, I don't like this. And
yeah, I understand.
I was like, yeah, I get it, like these are spooky. And I was like, I don't know, like you could try like putting salt around your bed or something, or you know, around the windows and doors.
Yeah,
I've heard
whatever makes you feel better.
I was like, you know, but I also read, you know, in things when I was researching this, because we were having a lot of experiences, like if you do that, you could trap something in there. So like maybe just better to leave it alone. It never really hurt us. And she ended up putting salt in front of the door and the window, and she laid down, and not, I don't know, 15 minutes later, we get a phone call again, and she's screaming, and I could hear like a rattling of a closet. And she's like, I don't know what I did. And then she just like ran out of the house, went to a bar, and she wouldn't stay in the house anymore. Like, yeah. I'm a great friend.
All right, that story really hit home for me. Cause I've lived in a haunted house before. I mean, I talked about it on the first Halloween special. It wasn't anywhere near what that was like, but I don't know, when you're faced with something scary like that, you think there'd be some big poetic or cinematic way that you handle it, but I mean, sometimes you're just a dumbass about it. I don't know. I thought it was funny. This horrifying stuff kept happening, but you know, what are you gonna do? You can't move really, so you just kind of start drinking more. Or for me, we had like this ghost in our kitchen, and I guess, you know, you're supposed to be terrified of it, but at the same time, sometimes there would be some food in that fridge from Costco, and I wouldn't really give a shit. I would just go eat food, knowing there's a ghost in there. I don't know. It's not really all like the movies. Something could be really scary. Something could be really scary and outerworldly. But at the same time, you could just fully power through it, in your own way. So I really like that one. Thank you guys for telling that story. You probably should have warned your friends that they're moving into a haunted house, but that's up to you. So if it ever happens again, you should definitely warn them. Okay, this next story is probably the most powerful one that we have, and the one I cared about the most after hearing it. I really appreciate this person for telling this story, because I think it was pretty hard for them to do that. And it's hard to categorize this one, really. I don't really feel the need to do so, but it's a mix of, I guess, a story about somebody going through a very traumatic period of their life. So much so that there's, you know, wild details of it that are just barely mentioned casually. It was a crazy time in your life, and I think a lot of us know that going through something like that could, you know, seem kind of supernatural on its own. But there are also supernatural elements to this story, and I don't feel the need to categorize this story. I think it kind of stands on its own And I also don't think I need to do too much more of an intro to it. So I'm just going to let her take it over from here, and I hope you enjoy.
Okay. Hey, this is a story about me and my ex-boyfriend from, a few years ago in Long Island, New York. Basically, things started after my ex-boyfriend got home from the war. He had done 2 tours, had seen a lot of crazy shit, and was just kind of like trying to readjust to civilian life. He was living with his stepmother at the time, in, the house that he had, been in with her. And I was there a lot, and he was also battling alcohol addiction. And this is like a few months after he got back. He wasn't really like in any kind of program. He was just like really like white knuckling sobriety. So it was kind of, we were like really happy to be together, and we were like crazy about each other, but it was like a very fraught time for us, I would say. Things kind of took a turn, and like I just started noticing like he would have this like really dark energy about him, and like his stepmom was like acting weird. So she was someone that was like very sensitive to like spirits and things like that. And like I found her like burning sage. So like she was just like, her demeanor was kind of changing, and she didn't really want to talk to me about it, which was weird because she and I were really close. I guess really the first thing was that we started every single night started hearing like, just we would be in bed at night and like hearing weird shit like around the house, like just like things that could have been explained, but it was just like banging noises and like thuds. And then like outside, like for whatever reason, like we were just hearing like raccoons fight like insanely like every night. And it was just something that was like all of a sudden it was just like you hear this like screeching outside for hours. And then one evening, it was like 5 p.m. like it wasn't dark out or anything. We were like just talking about like what we were gonna do for dinner that night, and we were like in the second floor of his house that was just his bedroom. Like all the other rooms were vacant, and we both heard this like it was like a growling sound coming from this like empty room that nobody was like living in, hadn't been used for anything. And it was like so like it sort of like started low and then like crescendoed, and like the door, I was standing in front of the door to the empty room, and I could feel the door like vibrating behind it. And it was just this like went on for like felt like a really long time, like 10 or 15 seconds. And afterwards I looked at him and I was like, what the fuck was that? And he was like, we're not talking about that. Like, I don't want to talk about that. Like, just pretend that it never happened. And I was like, okay, okay, we won't talk about it. Like that night, we were like in bed, we were sleeping, and I like basically like woke up to this feeling of this like first I looked out his window and I like noticed where the moon was, because that was just something I always did. And then there was just like this intense like pressure covering like my entire body, like really oppressive. Like I couldn't move and like I couldn't breathe. Just at the point where I was like really felt like I was like losing consciousness. Like I look over, I'm able to move. I look over at him in bed, and he is like, his body is in the bed, but like his head, like he's headless. And at that point, like I kind of like shake awake, and I'm like, oh my God, like you fucking idiot. Like that was just a dream. Like he's fine. Everything's fine. But like I looked out the window again, and like the moon and like the night sky, like was in the exact same position, and like everything looked the exact same as it had like in that dream, if that makes sense. And then like 2 days later, he had this really, really vicious relapse and like flipped his car and like almost died, because he was driving drunk. And like just, it was just this like, it felt like all of these things had been like leading up to that, and like had this brand new car that he had gotten, and like just everything was like totally fucking destroyed. And then Hurricane Sandy happened, which was like kind of devastated like huge portions of Long Island. And like I was living with my parents at the time, and we became homeless for like 6 months. They went to stay somewhere else, and I went to stay with him. And I won't get into like every single thing that happened, but like that darkness like that I had felt back before his like other relapse started to like creep into things. Like his face, like his whole expression changed, and like the way he spoke changed. Like he's this very like effusive, expressive person. This is gonna sound so stupid, but it was almost like he was like his face would be he'd be like squinting at me, like his whole expression was like so like tensed up, and like he just wouldn't, you know, he would say like one or two words, like he wouldn't speak the way he would normally speak, and like he was just like, I felt like he was just like slipping into somewhere else. And at night, like just like we would both like be hearing voices, like the covers were like getting pulled off of us, like when we were like in bed sleeping, like literally like yanked off of us. Walk around at night without feeling like something was like very much watching you and like very much like beating down on you. If I would like leave his house in the middle of the night, like it was almost like I could hear static like in my ears. Like it was just so like this constant like staticky like electricity feeling like all the time. Like he had this like shed where he like did woodworking, and like he would like go out into that shed for like, he would like not go to work and just spend like days in the shed. And like he is this person that is like very smart and like could look at any YouTube video, right, and like make anything from it, and like super handy, like that's his love, blah, blah, blah. And so he was always like, oh, I'm making this table, and then I'm gonna like, oh, I could make this thing for like a camera and turn it into a dolly, and then I can shoot videos. Like the ideas he had were like on and on and on and on. And that's what he was saying, that's what he was doing there, right? Like he was like, I'm doing this thing to like get my name out, blah blah blah. And then basically like there were a couple of times like where I went in there, especially like over a course of like a week or two, and it was like literally like he was just standing over the saw, like just cutting down pieces of wood and making them smaller. And like there was just nothing ever got made. Like it was just like he was just cutting wood. Like and that was like, I was like, oh, like there's no, and like as nothing ever got made. Like for you know, he would just be in there like cutting things down and like smoking cigarettes. He was just like starting to just like not even call in sick to work, like just not go to work. There was like not like a bathroom or anything, you know, like he still like, as far as I know, like would leave at some point, but it would be like full 14 hours, 16 hours, you know, like, and then just like sleep for a couple hours and then go back to the shed, like looping obsession. And it's like this weird thing that I have sort of, for me, like the like domestic violence aspects of that relationship and like the presence of like mutually felt like spiritual energy were like very intertwined. I mean, yeah, I mean it was like an emotionally abusive, like I was living in fear of his anger, of his temper. He would take my car and like just disappear with it, and like, you know, and him kind of like disappearing into that shed. And he was also like, you know, he just had a lot of PTSD, and like I mean there was also times where we were like, you know, like us hearing things too, was like he was like patrolling the house with a shotgun, and like, you know, I'd wake up with like the gun in my face, like, you know, and just be like, what the you know, and he'd be like in this whole, sorry, it's like that's a part that is harder to kind of like say, but it was just like very much like constant gaslighting, constantly like being told I wasn't good enough, constantly being told I was ugly and like I was fat, and he liked skinny girls, and like, well, whatever, I'm gonna like go out with other girls, like you should be so, like you're so lucky that I'm even coming home to you, like I should be thinking of you as defective now, but I'm not, and like isn't that great? Yeah. I mean, I was so scared of him. So like that, just like that sort of like mounted and continued until like the following spring, like was just at this breaking point. Like for whatever reason, like I would be like passing out like in the house all the time. And that may have been anxiety, but it was just like I would like get up to do things and like wake up and I'd be like on his bathroom floor. Like, just like, it was like this sort of like, just like losing time and like losing like sense of self. And then one night, and this, so I'm like raised Catholic, but like not really raised Catholic. You know what I mean? Like we said we were Catholic, but I had no like Christian like education or anything like that. one night I like just had this dream, and it was like I was in this desert, and this voice kept saying like Matthew 3:1, Matthew 3:1, and like all of a sudden I'm like in this car with these two like Southern soccer moms who are like have these really big hairdos, and they're like, listen, like we need to talk to you, like this is all fucked up right now, and like there's two things in this life, like you have like there's other people, and like they're always going to be doing what they're doing, and they're always going to be like fighting their own fights. They're like the river, and like you're standing in the river, and they're just like the water that's rushing past you, but like all you have in this life are like your 2 feet and like yourself, and you have the ability to like stand in the desert, and you have the ability to change what you're doing. Like you have to start living right, like you're not like living the right way basically. And they kept saying like read Matthew 3:1, read Matthew 3:1, and like I woke up from that dream, and it was like the first time in God knows how long that I had like felt any semblance of like levity or like happiness. And like I was like, whatever, like let me just Google the phrase like Matthew 3:1, and it was like it's basically like the Bible verse of like John the Baptist like being in the desert and like talking about like baptizing people in the river, and talking about like how we all have to change the way we're living, and like we have to do the right thing. And I was kind of like, okay, like I need to fucking leave. Like, all right, I get it. Like I'll leave him. And I did. And I just literally, like, it was within days of that I left him. And the thing that I remember the most was like, yeah, like at nighttime, like the air felt like thinner. Like I didn't feel like weight on me that I had felt. I just felt like there was just like light, so much more light around. And I was like, oh my, like, I can't believe like I've been living without this, like without feeling any semblance of joy or like anything like that. I so believe in the paranormal, and I've never been like unsure that it's real. And it was just kind of like, oh, like I needed to get that message. And like, that's how I got it. I kind of feel like they were, I don't know if they were like angels or they were just like these spirit, like because I don't know what like I don't know what the spiritual universe like looks like, but I think we're for sure like two spiritual like actors that were like had my back. Okay, can you? All right. Oh, it might be. Oh, that was my stepson. Sorry, Andy. Give me like a few more minutes, okay, buddy? Hello. All right, honey. Go ahead. But yeah, it's like after that, I was just like, oh my God, you can never do that again. You're worth so much more. Like I just went back, got my master's degree, like met my husband like a few months after that, and kind of like now I love my career, like I love my life. And I mean, he was super helpful and like helped me work through like therapy too. But yeah, I met someone that was like, oh no, like you, like that was fucking fully insane, and was super patient and cool. And yeah, now I'm stepmom and just kind of doing my thing.
All right. I just want to thank her one more time for telling that story. I know it was a difficult and long one to tell. In fact, you know, that was edited down. The full conversation was probably closer to an hour long. But I really liked that one. I really liked it a lot. And I'm glad she's doing okay now. So thanks again. And we're gonna transition now to this is Brandon's favorite story, and it's probably mine too. It's I don't really think we need to intro this one much. It's just I think you're gonna like this one. I think this next story, it's a little more lighthearted, but I think a yeah but still Halloween special kind of, it doesn't really make sense. But after recording this one, I was like, okay, this is a yeah but still Halloween story if there ever is one. So I'm just going to let this guy take over, and I know you guys are going to like it. This is going to be our final story, and I hope you enjoy.
So my name is Sam, 27, originally from Pennsylvania, and this is a story that happened years ago that, you know, I'd almost completely kind of forgot about and or, you know, blocked from my memory. Basically what had happened was it was 2009. Around this time, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 had recently come out, and so we were excited. We had a bunch of guys there. It was, I think, me and 7 other people, and we're at my friend Jake's house. Where I was from in Pennsylvania, it is out in the middle of nowhere. A lot of people call this area Pennsyltucky because it's like kind of no man's land. Even though we went to the same school and everything, he actually lived 45 minutes away. So I had like just become, a licensed driver, but drove out into the middle of the woods, like 45 minutes away, to go hang out and play Call of Duty. So there's a bunch of us there hanging out. We have, there's a couple of people like back on his waterbed, which is kind of a weird aside in its own. And then, a couple people on the floor in those cool little like gamer chairs that rock back and forth. And, we're just having a ball. So I think it was probably like later in that night, around like 10 or 11. We're in between games just kind of chatting, and Jake starts to tell us this story about his younger brother, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's fucking weird, man. I didn't know you had a brother." And he goes on to tell us it's like, yes, because his brother ended up dying. His brother had died when he was 12 in an ATV accident. It had like rolled on top of him, and ever since then, like a bunch of weird stuff would happen around the house. And he kind of started telling us about this. His dad had a garage out back, like kind of secluded back in the woods, where his dad and his brother would hang out a lot. And they had noticed, kind of a couple years after this whole thing happened, that, kind of weird stuff would happen around the house, specifically in this garage. Like they would put down, paint to be able to paint a car, and that paint would go missing, and then it would show up in other places. They would have parts down, they would go missing, they would show up, either in the garage or in different places. And one of the times, stuff had started showing up in the basement, and he goes on to basically tell us that where his brother's room was in the basement. And it was a fully furnished basement, but since then, nobody had really been there. It was just kind of a laundry room. They would use it in the daytime, but definitely not go down there at night, because just weird stuff would happen. Like doors would open and shut, lights would turn on and off. Around this time, I kind of noticed that people, like friends one at a time, were leaving and coming back, and I was just like, oh, that's like weird or whatever. They're probably just going to like take a shit or something. Didn't think too much of it. So he goes on to say basically, okay, and anybody who can spend more than 30 minutes down there, I bet you can't. We'll give you like $20 if you can spend more than 30 minutes down there. So everybody takes out what like random dollar bills they have, put it on the table, and finally there's enough where I'm like, okay, like I'll fucking do it. I don't believe in ghosts. Ghosts aren't real. Like you guys are all just being pussies. This is not like a real thing. So they say, okay, go do it. Go do it. We have the cash here. We'll, if you can spend more than 30 minutes down there, we'll give it to you. So as I was like about to head downstairs, one of the guys says to me, he's like, oh, ghosts, you'll know that a ghost is there because of, a magnetic field, and, compasses, are, basically little magnets. So you'll know that the ghost is there. So I say, okay. And I take the compass from him, and I start walking downstairs. It's totally dark. I couldn't turn on the lights, and they closed the door right behind me. So I walk down the stairs, and I have, my the flashlight on my phone, little, LG chocolate, taking it with me to kind of guide my way. That's all they said that I could take. And I go down, and I sit on the couch. At this point, I'm feeling like pretty confident this is going to be, some real easy money that I'm about to make just by hanging out down here for 30 minutes. So I place the compass in front of me, on the coffee table. And, I know that, phones can be weird with like magnets and compasses. So I have the phone, and I'm holding it, far away enough from, this compass that, nothing's going on. So I turn off my phone light for, just a little bit and, kind of hang out and wait. A couple minutes pass and I'm saying, oh, okay, what's going on? I can't see this compass at all because it's pitch black in this basement. And I take it and I shine it onto the coffee table, and I see, that the wheel is, kind of slowly starting to spin of the compass. It's, going around. And then suddenly it starts to pick up speed and spinning faster and faster and faster. And once it starts really gaining momentum is when, I start panicking and I start really, really freaking out for the first time. And at the point where this thing is just going around and around and around, 100 times a minute, is when I say, I cannot do this anymore. I am freaked the fuck out. This ghost is absolutely real. And I'm out of there. And I go to run up the stairs, and I get to maybe the 4th or 5th step up. All of a sudden, I hear this noise that it's kind of like it's almost like a TV turning on, but much louder. And it goes, whoomp. And the TV, out of nowhere, turns on. And I look back and I see the TV. And on the TV is a mother. She's in a nightgown. She's kind of consoling a young boy who's sitting on the couch. And I am absolutely terrified at this point, because it's all in black and white. This TV show is in black and white, and I had remembered something from a previous time I had been over at his house that, the TVs are all on one channel. If you change a TV from one input to another, you change it from you're watching the news or something, you want to go play, Call of Duty, for example, that's going to change the TV downstairs. And I see this and come bursting up out of the room, absolutely terrified, out of my mind, and saying, guys, I can't do this. This is absolutely terrifying. And they are like, yeah, we told you there's a ghost down there. Like, this is my brother's ghost who is at the house. And I say, I start trying to rationalize a little bit. I'm saying, well, it can't, I bet you had something on the TV, and they show me, and nope, it's still the same. They're playing Call of Duty upstairs. It's a completely different thing on downstairs. We try and switch the channels. They all come down with me. We turn on the lights, just because I'm saying, hey, we gotta prove that this is not real. And sure enough, all of the channels change on the same frequency. Nobody can explain what happened, except saying, this was definitely the ghost. And we probably talked about this for another hour or two, and we were, I'm absolutely fully convinced of what I saw. The thing that I learned a couple days after this sort of, incident happened, is that during the time that we were playing Call of Duty, and I noticed people leaving one by one, they were actually going to masturbate one by one into a cup that they were going to pour on me. But the thing that happened is they got so distracted. They got absolutely so distracted by this whole ghost thing, and me, the skeptic, having this firsthand experience. They forgot entirely about this cup of semen that was hidden in Jake's dresser until Jake smelled it a couple days later and pulled it out and was like, what the fuck? There is a cup of cum in my dresser.
I'm sorry. He kept the cum cup. That's the biggest plot twist I've ever heard.
It was just like, but so that now I gotta.
They're gonna come on you.
Yeah, they were fully going to dump a cup of cum in me, and then I also found out, because we're talking about this, days later at lunch, that the last person who had to try and masturbate into the cup it was like on the verge of spilling on him. So it took him like the entire time that I was down there, and by the time I came bursting up, he didn't even get to finish and contribute to it. So
wait, so he was trying to jerk off 2 floors above while you were getting scared by the ghost?
Yeah, the last guy, while I was getting scared by the ghost, they were like, okay, we're going to finish the cum cup by, distracting Sam. But it ended up that this ghost is completely real, and the ghost ended up saving me from like embarrassment and just everything that went along with it. Because I was a newer friend to the group at that time, so they were always kind of messing with me.
Who's the prank really on at that point? Like, I guess you get it on you. You have to like wash your clothes and it's gross. But then again, like at the end of the day, that didn't happen. And they're just like 7 dudes who all jerked off in a cup together. They're
just having a bukkake by themselves.
Yeah. Just like jerking off to your own friend's cum. Like looking at it. I presume they were looking at it because you were saying that it was like hard because he was worried about the cup spilling. So, he was looking at that weird mixed, Chex Mix of cum. That's fucked up.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. Well, I'm a little speechless. You got saved by the ghost.
I got saved by the ghost.
I'd like to say, on behalf of the podcast, fuck those kids.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
they probably grew up to be pieces of shit.
Yeah, I have a different group of friends now, to
good.
Put it lightly.
And they don't, and they hopefully don't come on you.
Yeah,
unless you want them to.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I don't think there's a better way to end this episode than with that story. That guy, he sent me that over email, and it was a long email, right? And I mean, he told me the same story, right? But by the time he got to the thing at the end, I was completely surprised. I fully spit out my water, full spit take, dying laughing. I couldn't believe it. And I mean, it's just a great story. I mean, what a twist, right? It's like I would tell him to go try to do like the Moth Story Slam, but I'm pretty sure they would not let him tell that story on there, and I doubt the NPR audience would like it very much. So quite honestly, I feel really good. I feel really good doing these episodes because I've spent so much time working on this, way too much time, guys, all by myself. I spent so many hours talking on the phone to all these people, recording them, and then I easily spent 30 hours total editing this episode. But that is all to say that it's entirely worth it, if it means that I was able to give that story a platform to be told on where it fits and makes sense. Because I don't know. I'm just I'm glad that story was told to me, and I'm glad that all these stories are told to me. They're all amazing. I mean, they all blew me away, and I got a lot more. There was a lot more stories that I got emailed to me that were incredible. There were even some that I recorded that I just didn't have time to edit into this episode, and maybe they'll come out down the road as bonus episodes. But there's an amazing amount of stuff, and these are people that all listen to this podcast. So I just want to say thank you, everybody who submitted these stories. I'll definitely do another one of these next year, and I'll be looking for more. So if you have one that you didn't tell me or we didn't get around to recording it, start thinking about it for next year. So yeah, I want to thank everybody who told me their stories. I want to thank you guys for being our patrons, of course. I don't want to thank Brandon because he did not help. I did this entirely on my own. So thank you to me. But also thank you to Pat McDermott, a.k.a. North Americans. All the music you heard on this episode was pretty much by North Americans. So if you want to go check him out, I highly recommend it. He's also been on this podcast before in a very early episode, telling us a one-off story. So thank you to North Americans for the music, and I hope everybody has a happy Halloween, and I hope you all enjoyed the episode.